check my screens here. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is sort of an info session on what's involved in running for the board and what's involved as being a board member and consequently a committee member. So I'll get started with the presentation, and like I said, we'll take questions along the way. So Amy is, I'll just introduce who's on the line. I'm the registrar here at the college. My name is Fazal. And I've been joined by my colleague and deputy registrar and legal counsel, Amy Stein. And you've probably been communicated with by our manager of communications, Carolyn Robertson, who's on the line as well. So without any further ado, I will move to the next slide and just do a quick land acknowledgement. So the College of Opticians of Ontario operates on the traditional lands of many First Nation, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, as well as the Wendat people. The college acknowledges and respects that these lands are now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who continue to experience the impacts of colonization. The college also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. With the utmost respect and humility, we at the college are grateful to live and work on these lands and are committed to educating ourselves in areas of cultural safety and humility in the delivery of equitable health care in Ontario. So with that, I'll get kicked off here. So Carolyn, if I can get the next slide. So the overview for today is that we're going to talk about what the college's function is, what the board does, talk about board member competencies and characteristics, hopefully some benefits of being involved as a board member. We'll do a quick overview of the elections process and talk about the pre-election screening interview. Next slide, please. Thank you. So a little bit about what the college's function is. So, you know, we talk about this a lot at all the college updates and things like that when we're out talking to our registrants. But essentially, the college is coming from a perspective of public interest. And essentially, we start right at the beginning of an optician's journey, setting out and monitoring entry to practice requirements. So those are the things, the competencies that our schools are teaching to. So we are involved in developing those, make sure that that content is delivered at accredited schools, and then flows through to the exam, which is based on those entry to practice requirements. Once you're graduated and you're licensed, we continue to be part of your career journey by establishing and maintaining the standards of practice that govern your day-to-day work. We're also there to receive and resolve complaints and hold discipline hearings where necessary. Those complaints could come from a variety of sources, including insurance companies, the public, etc. And through your life journey as an optician, we promote continued competence through our quality assurance program. And as we talk about all the time, like any other health regulated profession, membership is mandatory in order to practice opticianry. Now that differs from a professional association where the focus is on advocating for the needs of the profession as opposed to the public. Professional associations provide benefits like liability insurance, something that we require, but we don't provide. We require continuing education from the college. A lot of these associations provide CE. They deliver industry news, and to be a member is actually voluntary. So it's really up to you if you want to join, but they do try to create a value proposition. Carolyn, if I can get the next slide, please. So what does the board do and what do its directors do? So as I had set out, there's a big public focus. It's not the place really to advocate for opticianry. Sometimes there are people who have got issues that are near and dear to them and important issues, but they're more of an advocacy for opticians. And that's more of an association role. So if you're looking to come onto the board, it's to keep your public focus sort of at the front of mind. As a board member and a director of the board, some of the things that you do are things like setting the strategic direction for the college, We're actually in a strategic planning cycle right now where we sort of work with the board and its stakeholders to set up where the college is going for the next 3 years. And then all our day-to-day operations follow that strategic plan for the next 3 years. The board work includes things like reviewing proposals from the committees of the college regarding policies, bylaws, and other regulatory legislation. And to monitor the operations of the college through a series of monitoring reports around things like finances and operations. So a typical board meeting, you may be reviewing bylaws or policies, things like maybe updates, policies coming from quality assurance. And then there's always going to be a chunk of monitoring reports where you're looking at the finances of the college every quarter, making sure that we're operating within the budgeted norms set out previously, and other things that control or mitigate risk. As a board member, you will have some probably minimal work as a committee member as well. And that's where a lot of the heavy lifting is happening around developing policies and things like file reviews. If you're on registration, you're looking at possibly applications to reinstate people's license. If you're on things like the ICR, which is the Inquiries Complaints Committee, you're looking at possible files around complaints. So there is file reviews and things like that as a committee member. If I can get the next slide, Carolyn. And a big thing around the board and being a board and board member director is that you have a lot of fiduciary duties. Some of them include that you've got to be accountable for your actions, accountable to the mandate of the college, which is around public interest. There's an expectation that you're prepared for meetings. So there is a degree of reading that has to be done, file reading, briefing notes, things like that, because we need you to be there at the table, ready to have an informed conversation and be able to make decisions. There's an expectation of loyalty and confidentiality, where you vote democratically on things, you discuss, you debate, hopefully you come to consensus. But at the end of the day, once a decision is rendered by the board's majority, even if you're offside, there is an expectation that you support the direction of the board. Confidentiality is huge. Sometimes you're looking at complaints around public information, patient information, things like that. There are things like legislation that were in draft stage and things that aren't necessarily yet for public consumption. At the end of the day, our aim is to be as transparent as possible, and that's why our meetings are broadcast on platforms like YouTube, so that you can actually see the debate going on at the table. But up until leading discussions at committee level and things like that, there's an expectation of confidentiality until things are finalized. It's really important. We all wear multiple hats. Sometimes we come from a retail background, sometimes from academic backgrounds, things like that. And we may be talking about things that impact those areas at the board. And it's really important that you disclose conflicts of interest ahead of time. There's nothing wrong with having a conflict. We all wear multiple hats, but it's important to be transparent to say, well, this could impact something I'm doing, in the interest of keeping the reputation of the college and its integrity. I'm going to step away from this conversation so it doesn't look like I influenced it in my interest. And as I said earlier in the other slide, there's a big role around risk management where you're looking at things that could impact the financial operations of the college or direction of the college. And you're looking at these monitoring reports so that you're up to date on what's happening and you can flag things of concern in case anything's been missed or raises a concern in the operations. Carolyn, if I get the next slide, please. So a big question that we get asked a lot is what's involved. Now, things have changed a lot post-pandemic. Zoom has become a thing as we're on here right now. So as far as attending meetings, that's become a lot more accessible. There's a quarterly board meeting. There's 4 board meetings throughout the year. The board meetings are sometimes a day to a day and a half. So you could expect about 4 to 6 days of board meeting attendance. Now, there has been some shift between going from completely remote to a desire to have some in person. So right now we are doing, out of the 4 board meetings, we're doing 2 in person and 2 remote. Now that doesn't preclude you from saying that, you know, for any reason that if it's difficult for you to get down, that we can include you to sort of Zoom into a meeting, then we would do a hybrid meeting. The aim for doing an in-person meeting is a great opportunity to meet your peers, and you know, sort of meet and greet the people that you're working with, so that there's a sort of a better connection that way. And you know, oftentimes to exchange information, some people are new around the table, and more experienced members are able to mentor a little bit when they see each other in person. Now, aside from your board meetings, you're typically on a committee or two throughout the year, and committees will typically have meetings throughout the year. And you can expect, depending on how busy the committee is, between 7 and 15 days a year. Now, a lot of these meetings are, well, pretty much all our committee meetings have been held virtually on Zoom, and typically are in chunks of maybe as short as a panel meeting that might be under an hour, to maybe 3 hours, but typically they're not exceeding a full day. But, you know, I'm not saying there won't be a full day meeting at times, but typically our meetings have been under a half day. So total time commitment, sorry, I've also missed that there is training that we provide throughout the year, and sometimes some strategic planning sessions. And those could add another 3 to 5 days in the year. So your total time commitment is about 14 to 26 days out of the year, again, depending on how many committees you're on and how often your committee meets. And we sort of help you in the beginning when you join. We help you get your feet wet. We try not to overload you. And we also seek, you know, we distribute information on each committee, what their role is and how many times they approximately meet. So you can kind of put forward any interest you have in a certain committee, and sort of, you know, dip your toe in the pond. Most meetings, as I said, require about, while they're held, you know, between half a day to as short as an hour, you can expect about 1 to 3 hours of prep before a meeting, looking at things in our virtual boardroom around briefing notes and file reviews. So there's always going to be prep. We never go in cold into a meeting. We always want the meetings to be productive and informed. So we always make sure that you've got reading material to bring you to speed before attending any of our meetings. Carolyn, if I can get the next slide. Meetings are held during business hours. So, you know, it is important to sort of assess that you can fit the college in during your work schedule. Because we're doing a lot of this stuff remote, some people choose to do it from work. It's really important that you have a quiet and private space, because some things might be discussed that are confidential. So it's important that you have a closed door space to do your meetings if you're doing it from work. As I said, from time to time, there'll be some in-person attendance that might be required. And currently we are doing, I think, the June board meeting in person this year and the December board meeting in person this year. If you reside outside the GTA, you can expense things like meals and travel and accommodations for the purposes of attending our in-person board meetings. And when I spoke about prep, you are reimbursed for your prep time for each of the meetings. So you get an attendance honorarium as well as a preparation honorarium. So board members who reside within the GTA are provided a per diem to cover things like meals in appropriate situations. For instance, when you're attending a full day meeting where we're not providing lunch, you'll typically find something local and be able to expense for lunch. Carolyn, if I can get the next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about hopefully the benefits of involvement. I can speak from a place of experience because I have had the opportunity to be a board member. Joanna, you've got your hand up for a question.
I just had a question about meetings.
Yeah.
How much time do you guys give like notice for a meeting?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So the board meetings, we try to actually lay them out right at the beginning of the year. and they're posted on our website. So you'll know those ones easily in advance. And then committee meetings, the aim is to give you a couple of weeks at least. We'll each board or committee manager or committee director will try different ways of, whatever ways work for that committee as far as contact goes, but maybe putting out like a doodle poll or something, and kind of surveying everybody to see what works. Also, at the beginning of the year, they may kind of poll you to see, do Mondays work, Tuesdays work, because they'll look at on the committee level, they'll look at the specific group of people that are selected and see what works for them.
Okay, that's fair.
If I can add to that, because we were saying, the committees vary quite a bit in terms of how often they meet. They also vary a bit in terms of how they plan out their year. So there are a couple of committees that are able to sort of plan out their whole year the way the board does, and they book kind of quarterly meetings. But there are a couple of committees where the kinds of work that they do is a bit more based on caseload. And sometimes there are urgent things that could come up where you might need to get a panel together within a few days. So what we do with our folks is we give you kind of an info sheet about what to expect from each committee. And we'll ask you whether you're someone who could be potentially available on short notice for a meeting, because we know that that is something that some people can manage and some people that's just not available to them, or it's not something that they can offer. And we make our committee assignments with that information in mind, just to make sure that we're being mindful of different people's schedules.
So sort of getting back to the benefits, there is a real growth trajectory, and we actually see it right in front of our eyes. We've seen board members who are sometimes very soft-spoken, or, quiet, and they take on quite a leadership role during their term. We provide things like facilitation training so that we help you prepare if you want to chair your committee or vice chair your committee, or eventually chair the board. We do frequent chair and vice chair support training to teach you how to run a meeting, how to facilitate conversation, and to manage challenging conversations. We have training around actually how to have some good conversations and make sure that everyone's included. We do training around DEI and things like that. So there's always training happening throughout the year and during your term as a director. A lot of these skills are transferable. I've heard from board members who've said, the training that I got as a chair has really helped me with my public speaking and working in my own company, heading staff meetings and things like that. It's a great opportunity to contribute to public safety and the perception of opticians amongst the patient base in Ontario. So that's a really fulfilling attribute of being a board member. You're directly involved in the governance of your profession. We all have opinions on things like the fees involved and what direction and why are we doing things. And being on the board gives you a great inside look at how things work, why things work the way they do, and shaping, how we deploy these requirements, often government requirements like legislation, to our to our registrant base in a way that's engaging, meaningful, and relational. And it's not a volunteer position. It is compensated. You're not going to get rich over this or anything like that. We try to have a formula where we look at what opticians are sort of averagely making in the marketplace and hope to create sort of a replacement income for the day to give us your time from work. So we're hoping that you're not out of pocket by participating, and hopefully that the other attributes of participation give you value in being part of our board. Carol, if I can get the next slide. So there are a number of core competencies that have been developed in the past few years, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy to speak to those competencies and sort of how we screen for them. So Amy, if I can turn it to you.
Yeah, for sure. Just wanted to check in if there were any other questions about any of the sort of logistics and what the board is, what it does, all of that before we get into the competencies. All right, if anything comes up, please interrupt me at any point. So I'm going to talk about these competencies, but I also just want to start with kind of a bit of a rationale. So why are there competencies at all? So, this is an election information session because of course, as you know, the optician members of the college's board are elected by members of the profession, and that's one of the hallmarks of being a self-regulating profession, meaning that members of the profession itself have been entrusted with the care of that profession. So the reason for the competencies is because even though this is an election-based system to populate the board, it's been recognized that self-regulation in and of itself is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege that's been granted by the government, and the primary sort of foundation to all of this is trust. Trust in the organization and trust that the college is going to regulate the profession, not in the interest of the profession, but in the interest of the public. So that's going back to the mandate that Fazal was talking about earlier. So the basis for these competencies is to say, that yes, this is an election. Yes, it's up to the registered opticians of this province to select who governs the college and who thereby governs their own regulatory body. But there is an agreement amongst the board that decided to enact these competencies a number of years ago to say it's important that someone coming to this position demonstrate these types of attributes and competencies in order to instill that public trust, in order to be able to say, we have identified members who possess these qualities. Now, I'm going to go through each one of these in a little bit more detail, but just to give you the overview, you'll notice here we've got 5 core competencies, and we call them behavioral competencies. So we've got passion, being public service oriented, exemplified integrity, being unbiased and open-minded, demonstrating critical judgment and decision-making, and collaboration and inclusion. So that's what's on the list. A couple of things that you might notice which are not on the list. There's no competency around prior experience on a board or prior experience on committees. There's no competencies around the number of years that you have worked in the profession. So this is important, and this was quite deliberate, because these are meant to be competencies that anyone can bring to the table, not just competencies that are demonstrated by someone who's already done this kind of work, because that tends to self-perpetuate the same kinds of ideas, and it potentially excludes people who bring these wonderful competencies to the table, but may not have had opportunities to do this kind of work before. So these are not meant to be things that block anyone from participating. They're in fact meant to be ways of opening the door to people from all sorts of different experiences and backgrounds to come and serve in this role on the college. So let me take you through these competencies. So let's jump to the next slide, please. So this first one around passion and public service oriented. So this is sort of broken down and it's about people who demonstrate that initiative and that commitment towards the practice of opticianry, and a commitment to the college's mandate, which, as we keep drilling in already, and if you spend time on the board, you'll hear it from us plenty more, is around that public interest, where that is the primary focus of every decision that gets made. So on the next slide, we've got exemplified integrity. So this is definitely a desirable quality in a board member who's regulating in a public safety capacity. So the person should be able to demonstrate a conviction to do what's right, reject what's wrong, and regardless of sort of personal consequences, feeling that their popularity might suffer as a result, for example, of having to make a difficult decision that might be unpopular. Next slide, please. So next, unbiased and open-minded. So this is the ability to self-identify, set aside your conscious biases, and then also to reflect on what we would call unconscious biases in all situations. It's this idea that not all biases are known to us, but we have to try and identify and be aware of when we might be venturing into the territory of an unconscious bias. And it's also someone who actively listens, absorbs the information, makes an informed decision, and is open-minded to hearing other people's views, considering them, and potentially even changing their mind in some cases. So coming to the table without that sort of closed-minded approach. And this is really important because the decisions that are being made have the ability to impact people in a very meaningful way, in a very significant way. So we need to know that the people making those decisions have come at them and are willing to listen, willing to set aside their own personal viewpoints, their own personal things that they bring to the table that they might be seeing it from a particular perspective. On the next slide, please. We've got critical judgment and decision making. So this is, following along the lines of the last competency. There's a lot of decision making that goes on as a board member, as a committee member. So that critical judgment, those decision making skills are going to be very important. So the good decisions, how this has been defined is that it's based on a combination of analysis, wisdom, experience, and good judgment. And this is something that we already see opticians demonstrating every day in their practice. And it's something that the idea is to bring this to the table as a board member as well. And also someone who comfortably deals with complex concepts and complexity, looks beyond the obvious. So with that, avoiding groupthink or just going along with something that happens to be the status quo. And then finally, on the next slide, we've got collaboration and inclusion. So that's an open mindset, that's listening without judgment, embracing diversity of others, the diversity of thought around the table, and seeking to understand instead of perhaps judging, and building on the strengths of others in that capacity. So those are the 5 competencies in a nutshell. So let's go to the next slide. Because I'm going to sort of go into how the election process actually plays out and where this fits in, which is in particular the screening interview, which I know is something that if you haven't participated in one before, you might want a bit of information on what to expect from that. So just to back that up a little bit, the election process overview in general. So there is a nomination guide that was circulated in the email that was sent out to everyone that has a lot more detailed information. It's also available on our website. There's a number of FAQs in there. So I think that's a really good starting point for anyone with any interest on what the actual election and nomination process looks like. Then there's also a requirement for anyone interested in putting their name forward to complete a pre-election training module. And this is available to you through your registrant portal. It's a chapter of the jurisprudence handbook that the college has developed, and it's a chapter that is on the Regulated Health Professions Act, or governing legislation. Now, if this is something that you've already completed as part of your quality assurance requirements anytime in the last under 3 years, you won't be able to complete it again without first contacting us and asking for a reset link, but we'll take care of that for you. So just reach out to us and we'll get that taken care of. And you can, even if you're doing this for the purposes of seeking a nomination, you can absolutely still count it toward your portfolio this year for a PG hour. So nominations are open now and they are due before May 23rd at noon. So you'll see in the nomination guide, there's a package that you need to complete and some information you'll need to submit, including having 3 people from your district sign a nomination and send that all into us. So we encourage you to start the process early, make sure that you're checking all the little bits and bobs that you need to submit to us. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a checklist to assist you with that in the package. So once you've done that, there's a bit of a pre-screening that goes on internally, and that's just a paper screening based on a checklist that you're going to complete as part of the nomination submission package. And that's double checking that you meet the nomination criteria in our bylaws. There's a number of questions there around other roles that you might be serving on or things to do with your registration history. So provided all of that has no concerns or nothing that is flagged, then we will be reaching out to you about setting up your screening interview. So those screening interviews for anyone that wants to seek election to the board. However, if you have previously completed the screening interview within the last 3 years, you don't need to do it again a second time. If you're outside of that 3-year window, then you would need to undergo another screening. So the date that has been set aside for this is on June 12th, but there is a backup date on June 16th. So if you're planning to seek nomination and you happen to know that you have conflicts with these dates, if you could let us know as soon as you can, and we'll try to make arrangements for you. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that interview looks like in a moment, but this is just the dates just to have them on your radar. And then you'll see there's a bit of a gap because the voting is not going to actually take place until the end of September. It's going to be open for a 2-week period. So you'll have a period after the nomination period closes, after the screening interviews, where you can build up support. You can engage in campaigning, as you will, if you choose to do that. And the voting will actually happen in the fall. You've got an email address there, elections@collegeofopticians.ca, and that is your main point of contact for any questions along the way. So next slide, please. So let's dig into the interview a little bit more. So the interview typically lasts about 20 to 30 minutes, and you're going to be interviewed by, typically it's a 3-person panel of the college's screening committee. The screening committee is made up of people who are neither opticians nor board members. So they are sitting a bit arm's length from the process, because this is how the board assures that they're getting an objective panel to meet with the potential candidates and screen you against these competencies that we talked about. So there will be at least that panel on the call, as well as some administrative staff observing. So don't be surprised, or hopefully not intimidated, if there are, a number of people on it's held by Zoom, on the Zoom call. They're just there to make sure that everything is running smoothly, take down all the information, and assist the panel in coming to their scores. So the purpose of the interview is to assess whether you meet the 5 core competencies that we outlined before. So that is all that interview is for. There's nothing that's going to be asked of you about your practice or about things to do with your registration status or history. So this is strictly about those 5 competencies. So on the next slide, please. Let's go through a couple of bullet points on how to prepare for this. So we recommend that you take a look at the college's website, learn as much as you can about what the college does, its public protection mandate, and that's going to go toward some of the questions and around, especially the competency around that public service orientation. And we recommend that you be prepared to speak about a couple of things. So firstly, that you are prepared to speak about why you're interested in joining the board and what you would like to accomplish as a board member. And then we'd like to hear from you on some examples of how you demonstrate each of these competencies. Bear in mind, these examples can be drawn from anywhere in your life. They don't have to be from prior experience on a board or committee. However, if you do have that experience and you'd like to refer to examples from that, you're more than welcome. But they can come from your professional life, or even from your personal life, from volunteer experiences, from any facet of your life. Clubs, hobbies, anything is perfectly reasonable. So an example could be, tell us about a time you collaborated with others in order to carry out a task or project. So you'll see you're being asked here to provide a specific example. So we recommend that you maybe take a look at some of those competencies and think about examples from different facets of your life where you might have had opportunities to demonstrate them. Now, the interview is held via Zoom, so we do recommend that you do a technology test ahead of time. Just make sure that you're able to do the interview from somewhere with a relatively stable internet connection, that's quiet, that's private, all of that. Any questions about any of that before I move on? Well, great, because I think that actually is the final slide. Carolyn, are we moving on? Yeah. So this is where we open up the floor to you if there are any questions about this or anything else that we haven't covered today.
Can I just ask you a quick question, Amy?
Yeah.
You were talking about getting nominated with signatures. Can you just clarify that for me, please?
So the nomination form asks you to get essentially a name, and it's a digital signature. So it doesn't have to be physical, of 3 people from within your district, and that's going to count as a nomination.
And then where do I find those people from my district?
So it's asking people in your district that you know.
So it could be colleagues that you're
Yeah.
working with, or just people in your district.
And it has to be an optician?
It has to be a registered optician, yeah. Someone
Okay,
who's
perfect. Thank
like
you.
currently in good standing, essentially. So someone who's practicing at the moment.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Yeah. So, you know, and we have come across this, like when you do get their signature and stuff, if you have a question about if they're in your riding or district, you can always contact Carolyn and she can check our database. As far as good standing goes, check the public register. Because sometimes people send in their package at the 11th hour and they may have gotten somebody to sign who's in the wrong district or something, and then it's a real crazy scramble at the end. Joanna?
I just had a question about the contact lens mentor nominee. Do you have to be a hard lens fitter as well, or is that not a requirement?
Just a soft lens mentor.
Okay,
Any
perfect.
mentor, yeah.
Thank you.
And the contact lens mentor district is sort of all of Ontario, so it'll be a little easier to find nominees, probably nominators.
Yes. The nominators do not have to be contact lens mentors for that that particular district. Although incidentally, it is a little easier to find contact lens mentors on our public register by looking them up as contact lens mentors. I know our register doesn't necessarily, or actually it doesn't specify what district someone is in. And because it's based on place of residence typically rather than place of work, you might not be able to tell from just looking up their work address on the register. So we do recommend, if you're not sure, that you contact Carolyn and we will confirm for you.
So any other questions around time commitments, the process itself? You know, one thing we do is, you know, we ask you to submit a short bio and things, and we do feature it on our website. So if you just want to keep it simple and get your nominations and have us post up your bio, great. The bio can't be like sort of a campaign platform. We ask that it be just biographical information around, you know, who you are and maybe your experience. And then we'll feature that, but there's nothing stopping you from heading out there and meeting people and talking with them and things like that, the ones that are going to be casting their electronic vote for you in the fall. So we leave that in your hands. One other thing, if at the close of nominations and sort of the successful screening process, we're left with just one person in the district, you would be acclaimed. But if we have multiple people who have gone through the screening process from a district, we would run an election, and we would tell you that at the close of nominations shortly after. So if you can't think of a question on the spot, but something comes up, please reach out to Carolyn. And you know, one of us will get back, or Carolyn will get the answer for you and get back to you. We are here throughout the process. We do encourage you to participate. It's a great way of getting involved in governing your profession. We do, you know, end up developing a lot of skills. It's a great way to really understand why things work the way they do, and an opportunity to sort of shape it in a way that it's understandable, relational. We aim to have a really good relationship with our registrants while we're fulfilling our public interest mandate. And we think that the two of them can exist at the same time. And it really does revolve around the people around the board table. So it's an excellent opportunity. You know, sometimes dipping your toe into it and becoming an appointed member is a great way to start, or jumping right in and being a board member. We do a lot of onboarding. We do have a mentor program where you can identify mentors on the board who are willing to help out and help you navigate as you get your feet wet. But we do a couple of attempts at onboarding new members. We do a general onboarding at the beginning of the year every year. But we also will do targeted onboardings or one-on-ones with new people to get you sort of comfortable, and happy to do that throughout the year. You're not going to know everything on day one. You're going to know more than you did on day 365. Every year is going to show you'll get more and more comfortable. Don't be afraid of the challenge. Okay. So please reach out if you have any questions, and we thank you for making the time, and we really do hope that you follow through and get nominated and put your hat in the race.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Thank you so much. This is very helpful.
wonderful.
I'll be honest, it's quite intimidating looking at it, just reading through, but talking to you is super helpful. Thank you.
And you know what, Carolyn is great to go through the application process and stuff like that. So please feel free to reach out to any of us.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thanks, guys.
so much. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.